Aside from being potential opponents in the upcoming 2024 election, Donald Trump and Joe Biden are two men at the forefront of corporate and state power. Donald Trump, a career real estate mogul, and Joe Biden, a career politician. Both have ascended the ranks of their respective fields to become President of the United States. But honestly, who cares about any of that? What I really want to find out is, who's more racist between these two guys? Now, there are plenty of similar comparison videos out there, but pretty much all of them are biased either left or right. So I did my best to create an impartial yet exhaustive list dating back to the early 70s, when both men coincidentally started their careers. Personally, I think many of these examples can be chalked up to ignorance or insensitivity, but by 2023 standards, pretty much everything is racist, so that's the bar I'm using. I omitted examples that I thought were taken out of context. For example, recently, a viral clip circulated around social media of Biden using the N-word.
Already have a nigger mayor, we don't need any more nigger big shots.
However, this clip was taken out of context. Biden was questioning then Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, William Reynolds, about his role in alleged racial gerrymandering.
In a confidential portions of your staff memo, they brought to your attention the allegation that important legislators in defeating the Nunes plan in the basement said, quote, "We already have a nigger mayor, we don't need any more nigger big shots." President Nixon's former Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights said, quote, "This redistricting plan is, quote, one of the most egregious and blatant racial gerrymanders that I have ever seen."
Likewise, in an infamous 2017 press conference, Trump was asked to comment on the protests that turned violent in Charlottesville, North Carolina. He said that there were very fine people on both sides, which implied his support of white nationalists and neo-Nazis who were at the protest.
But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
However, when taken in full context, Trump clearly condemns the two aforementioned groups.
So you know what? It's fine. You're changing history, you're changing culture, and you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally.
So with that said, let's begin in chronological order. When first elected senator in 1972, Joe Biden supported busing, a policy intended to promote school integration. However, just 2 years later, under pressure from white constituents and parents who staunchly opposed integration, Biden flip-flopped on the issue. For the next several years, he became one of the main promoters of anti-busing legislation in Congress, which involved working with several prominent segregationist senators, including Jesse Helms, Strom Thurmond, and Robert Byrd, former exalted Cyclops in the Ku Klux Klan. More on him later.
There are those of we social planners who think somehow that if we just subrogate man's individual characteristics and traits by making sure that presently a heterogeneous society becomes a totally homogeneous society, that somehow we're going to solve our social ills. It's become respectable now for liberals to at least say publicly what they've been saying in private, that busing doesn't work.
In 1973, the Department of Justice sued Trump Management Corporation, a property management company owned by Donald and his father Fred, for violating the Fair Housing Act of 1968. The government alleged that Trump management was discriminating against potential renters based on race. To quote a New York Times article, to prove the discrimination, blacks were repeatedly dispatched as testers to Trump apartment buildings to inquire about vacancies, and white testers were sent soon after. Repeatedly, the black person was told that nothing was available, while the white tester was shown apartments for immediate rental. According to two former employees, the company only wanted to rent to, quote, Jews and executives, and discouraged rental to blacks. In the book No Ordinary Joe, The Life and Career of Joe Biden, author David Hagen recounts a statement from Biden in 1975 speaking on reparations. Quote, "I did not buy the concept, popular in the 60s, which said, 'We have suppressed the black man for 300 years, and the white man is now far ahead in the race for everything our society offers. In order to even the score, we must now give the black man a head start, or even hold the white man back to even the race.' I don't buy that. I don't feel responsible for the sins of my father and grandfather. I feel responsible for what the situation is today, for the sins of my own generation. And I'll be damned if I feel responsible to pay for what happened 300 years ago." According to a 2015 New Yorker article, former employee at Trump's Castle Casino, Kip Brown, was quoted as saying, "When Donald and Ivana came to the casino, the bosses would order all the black people off the floor." In a 1977 Senate Judiciary Committee hearing on court-ordered busing, Biden made the following statement, quote, "Unless we do something about this, my children are going to grow up in a jungle, the jungle being a racial jungle, with tensions having built so high that it is going to explode at some point." In 1989, 5 men, 4 black and 1 Hispanic, were named as suspects in the rape of a white woman in Central Park. A year later, they were all convicted and sentenced, only to have those convictions overturned in 2002 after another man confessed to the crime. At the time of the incident, Trump ran a full-page ad in several newspapers calling for a reinstatement of the death penalty. Perhaps the largest stain on Biden's legacy was his active involvement in America's drug war in the 80s and 90s, which disproportionately impacted blacks and Hispanics. Biden co-wrote and sponsored a number of bills that led to the overall expansion of the prison industrial complex. He was actively involved in the Comprehensive Crime Control Act of 1984, the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986, and the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1988. Together, these bills led to a number of punitive measures, including limited access to bail, abolishing parole, longer and stricter sentences, increased drug war funding, asset forfeiture, a first-ever drug czar, harsher penalties for marijuana possession, and of course, the notorious 100-to-1 crack versus cocaine sentencing disparity. While speaking on the Senate floor in 1991, Biden bragged about working with Senator Strom Thurmond to enforce disproportionately strict penalties on crack cocaine.
Congress has passed over 230 new or expanded penalties for drug and criminal offenses in this United States. And these penalties range from an automatic 5 years in jail for any person caught with a rock of crack cocaine. If you have a piece of crack cocaine no bigger than this quarter that I'm holding in my hand, 1/4 of $1, we passed a law through the leadership of Senator Thurmond and myself and others, a law that says if you're caught with that, you go to jail.
Widely known as the architect of the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act, or 1994 Crime Bill, Biden speaks emphatically about his role spearheading this and previous crime bills.
I hope this crime bill, when it passes, the Biden-Hatch crime bill, as it becomes law, God willing, I hope that we will have ended, once and for all, this notion that is a hangover from the 60s, that somehow Democrats are weak on crime and Democratic presidents are weak on crime and Republicans are tough on crime. The truth is, every major crime bill since 1976 that's come out of this Congress, every minor crime bill has had the name of the Democratic senator from the state of Delaware, Joe Biden, on that bill.
That 1994 crime bill, it did contribute to mass incarceration in our country. It encouraged and was the first time that we had a federal 3 strikes law. It funded the building of more prisons in the states.
And I'd say lock the SOBs up.
In 1993, Biden spoke on the Senate floor imploring Congress to support the crime bill.
Unless we do something about that cadre of young people, tens of thousands of them, born out of wedlock, without parents, without supervision, without any structure, without any conscience developing, they will, or a portion of them will, become the predators 15 years from now. And Madam President, we have predators on our streets. They are beyond the pale, many of those people. Beyond the pale. We have no choice but to take them out of society.
In his book Trumped, former executive at Trump Plaza Hotel and Casino, John O'Donnell, wrote about Trump's disapproval of a black accountant.
Jack, in your book, you write about a conversation between you and Donald Trump, who was then a citizen, where he complained to you about an African-American employee in the casino's finance department. Can you just explain what happened?
he referred to, who was our chief financial officer, by the way, not just an employee, the top financial officer in the organization. And he complained to me that he didn't really like having a black guy counting his money. He went on to say, what I want counting my money is short guys with yarmulkes on their head. He perceived this guy as being lazy. And then he said, but that's probably not his fault because laziness is a trait in blacks.
In 2008, then presidential candidate Joe Biden shared his opinion about Democratic opponent Barack Obama.
I mean, you got the first sort of mainstream African American who is articulate and bright and clean and a nice-looking guy. I mean, that's a storybook, man.
In a 2008 C-SPAN interview, Biden bragged about his support among Indian Americans.
Manish, how are you, man? Well, good to see you. As you know, I got a lot of support from you, Indian.
That's where, and more to come, I think.
Yeah, so. No, I've had a great relationship. In Delaware, the largest growth in population is Indian Americans moving from India. You cannot go to a 7-Eleven or a Dunkin' Donuts unless you have a slight Indian accent. I'm not joking.
In a 1993 congressional testimony, Trump shared some interesting thoughts about Native American casino operators.
Is this you discussing Indian blood? We're going to judge people by whether they have Indian blood, whether they're qualified to run a gaming casino or not?
That probably is me, absolutely. Because I'll tell you what, if you look at some of the reservations that you've approved, you, sir, in your great wisdom have approved, I will tell you right now, they don't look like Indians to me, and they don't look like the Indians. Now, maybe we say politically correct or not politically correct. They don't look like Indians to me, and they don't look like Indians to Indians, and a lot of people are laughing at it, and you're telling how tough it is, how rough it is to get approved. Well, you go up to Connecticut, and you look. Now, they don't look like Indians to me, sir.
In 2010, Biden eulogized Senator Robert Byrd, former exalted Cyclops in the Ku Klux Klan, calling him a friend and mentor, and claiming that he elevated the Senate.
Robert C. Byrd elevated the Senate.
In 2000, the St. Regis Mohawk tribe announced plans to open a casino in the Catskills, which Trump saw as a threat to his own casinos in Atlantic City. Trump launched a smear campaign, secretly funding TV, radio, and print ads, accusing the tribe of being criminals and drug dealers. In 2012, Biden addressed a diverse crowd in Danville, Virginia, which included many black voters.
Romney wants to he said in the first 100 days, he's going to let the big banks once again write their own rules. Unchain Wall Street. They're going to put you all back in chains.
In 2012, Trump accused President Obama of being a terrible student who didn't deserve to get into Harvard or Columbia. In addition, he infamously promoted the birther movement, which alleged that Obama was born in Kenya, thus making him ineligible to be a U.S. president.
I heard he was a terrible student. Not like, okay, I heard he was a bad student. How does a bad student then go to Columbia and then go to Harvard? How does this happen? He gets into Columbia, top school, gets into Harvard, top school. He's a bad student. You know, obviously his grandparents wanted him to be a citizen of the United States, so they took out an ad. He could have been born in Kenya, could have been born, some people think, Indonesia. Why doesn't he show the birth certificate? And why is he spending millions of dollars in legal fees to get away from this issue?
In a 2014 speech, Biden said the following.
My son is Attorney General a year in Iraq, came back, and that's one of the things that he finds was most in need. When he was over there in Iraq for a year, people would come to him and talk about what was happening to them at home in terms of foreclosures, in terms of bad loans that were these Shylocks who took advantage of these women and men while overseas.
Shylock, of course, being a derogatory and anti-Semitic term for Jewish people working in the banking industry. During his presidential campaign in 2015, Trump leaned heavily on anti-immigration rhetoric, specifically targeting Mexican people.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
During his 2020 presidential campaign, Biden received criticism from the left for reminiscing about his years working with segregationist senators.
Joe Biden refuses to apologize for controversial remarks in which he defended working in the past with segregationist senators.
Biden recalling his early Senate career, bringing up two segregationist senators, Herman Talmadge and James Eastland, who called African Americans an inferior race. I was in a caucus with James O. Eastland, Biden said. He never called me boy, he always called me son. At least there was some civility. We got things done. We didn't agree on much of anything. We got things done.
In response to the Pulse nightclub shooting that resulted in 49 dead, Trump called for a ban on all Muslims entering the U.S.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on.
In a campaign speech in Iowa, Biden addressed a group of Asian and Hispanic voters with the following.
We have this notion that somehow if you're poor, you cannot do it. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids. Wealthy kids, black kids, Asian kids. No, I really mean it, but think how we think about it.
The implication, of course, being white kids wealthy, brown kids poor. At a campaign rally in Akron, Ohio, Trump shared his opinion about how blacks and Hispanics are living.
It is a disaster the way African Americans are living in many cases, and in many cases the way Hispanics are living. And I say it with such a deep felt feeling. What do you have to lose? I will straighten it out. I'll bring jobs back. We'll bring spirit back. We'll get rid of the crime. You'll be able to walk down the street without getting shot. Right now, you walk down the street, you get shot.
During the 2019 primary debates, this happened.
Come to you and talk to you about inequality in schools and race. In a conversation about how to deal with segregation in schools back in 1975, you told a reporter, "I don't feel responsible for the sins of my father and grandfather. I feel responsible for what the situation is today, for the sins of my own generation, and I'll be damned if I feel responsible to pay for what happened 300 years ago." You said that some 40 years ago. But as you stand here tonight, what responsibility do you think that Americans need to take to repair the legacy of slavery in our country?
Make sure that we bring in to help the teachers deal with the problems that come from home. The problems that come from home, we have one school psychologist for every 1,500 kids in America today. It's crazy. The teachers are and I'm married to a teacher. My deceased wife is a teacher. They have every problem coming to them. We have to make sure that every single child does in fact have 3-, 4-, and 5-year-olds go to school, not daycare, school. We bring social workers into homes and parents to help them deal with how to raise their children. It's not that they don't want to help, they don't know quite what to do. Play the radio, make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night, the phone, make sure the kids hear words.
So when asked what the country should do to address the legacy of slavery, Biden's answer was that black parents simply didn't know how to raise their kids properly. In an interview with Sean Hannity, Trump suggested that a disproportionate number of people coming from Haiti have AIDS.
So we have hundreds of thousands of people flowing in from Haiti. Haiti has a tremendous AIDS problem. AIDS is a step beyond. AIDS is a real bad problem. So hundreds of thousands of people are coming into our country. And if you look at the stats, if you look at the numbers, if you look at just take a look at what's happening in Haiti, a tremendous problem with AIDS. Many of those people will probably have AIDS, and they're coming into our country, and we don't do anything about it. We let everybody come in. Sean, it's like a death wish. It's like a death wish for our country.
In perhaps his most infamous interview, Biden reminds black people where their allegiance should lie.
Listen, you got to come see us when you come to New York, VP Biden.
I will.
It's a long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
In 2017, Trump pardoned Maricopa County Sheriff Joe Arpaio for criminal contempt of court. According to a DOJ investigation, quote, Arpaio oversaw the worst pattern of racial profiling by a law enforcement agency in U.S. history.
As we say, Sheriff Joe, he's done a great job for the people of Arizona. He's very strong on borders, very strong on illegal immigration.
In a FEMA press briefing, Biden referred to his senior press advisor, Cedric Richmond, as, quote, boy.
And I'm here with my senior advisor and boy who knows Louisiana very, very well, man.
In 2019, Trump tweeted unsavory comments likely directed at the 4 minority Democratic congresswomen known as the Squad. He alleged they originally came from, quote, countries whose governments are a complete and total catastrophe, the worst, most corrupt, and inept anywhere in the world. He followed that up with, quote, why don't they go back and help fix the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came? Then come back and show us how. It's worth noting that 3 of the 4 congresswomen were born in the U.S. During a speech in North Carolina, Biden offered his opinion on why it's apparently hard to get Latinx people vaccinated.
It's awful hard as well to get LatinX vaccinated as well. Why? They're worried that they'll be vaccinated and deported.
Implying, of course, that all Latinos in the U.S. are illegal aliens. It's also worth noting that only 3% of Hispanics use the term Latinx, according to Pew Research. In multiple instances, Trump referred to COVID-19 as the Kung flu.
What I said the other night, there's never been anything where they have so many names. I could give you 19 or 20 names for that, right? It's a disease, without question, has more names than any disease in history. Kung flu. Kung flu, yeah. Kung flu.
In an interview with members of the National Association of Black and Hispanic Journalists, Biden shared some interesting thoughts about diversity.
Are you going to re-engage with Cuba, though? I mean, I'm specifically wondering about, the Florida communities that are, incredibly interested in the Cuba issue and see status given to Venezuelans while Cubans are being deported.
The answer is yes. I'm going to engage. Yes. Yes. And by the way, what you all know, but most people don't know, unlike the African-American community, with notable exceptions, the Latino community is an incredibly diverse community with incredibly different attitudes about different things.
In her 2022 book, Confidence Man, Maggie Haberman recounts a joke Trump made about his former girlfriend, Carrie Young.
What she quotes him as saying is, you got your looks from your mother and your intelligence from your dad, the white side. Yeah, that's true. And Cara, I see you like breathing, and I'm like, I don't want to ask you about this because I can tell this is not a happy recollection.
Because it sounds, when someone says something in jest, are they kidding? I don't know.
During an event observing the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Massacre, Biden shared some interesting thoughts about black entrepreneurs.
The data shows young black entrepreneurs are just as capable of succeeding given the chance as white entrepreneurs are, but they don't have lawyers, they don't have accountants, but they have great ideas.
And there you have it, my exhaustive list of racist factoids from the 2 most recent U.S. presidents. As far as who's more racist, my vote would probably have to go to Biden. While no one can deny Trump's proclivity for lobbing insults at virtually every minority group in existence, Biden tends to pander to minorities, blacks in particular, which often comes across as patronizing. This, combined with his extensive involvement in the 80s and 90s crime bills, gives him a pretty sizable edge over Trump. But who do you think is more racist? Do you agree? Disagree? Let me know in the comments. See you guys next time.